that challenge and overcoming that challenge, I believe, will make a lot of men in better shape with less health issues, which then in fact allows to have better sex lives, which allow them to have better relationships and it's this whole chain effect. But the biggest thing there is actually, it's not just being healthy, it's men challenging themselves to be better.
So I'd like to welcome everyone to the Remed-e podcast. This is the first episode that we're doing. Pretty excited for this. So for those of you that don't know, what Remed-e is we're a telehealth platform, and we help men in South Africa manage their sexual health and confidence in the most discreet and efficient way possible, 100% online. So today I'm joined with Joshua Capazorio, a strength coach and multiple business owner. So welcome, bro.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on. It's great to kick off this podcast.
Yeah, I know we've been speaking about this for a couple months, so I'm glad we were both, well, not both of us. I'm glad that you were able to make some time.
No, it's I think on both of our sides. I mean, you also dabble in a few businesses yourself, so the good old time is a tough one to get us to just sit down and discuss these topics.
For sure. So I think one of the things I'd love to just jump straight into is your journey from kind of finishing school and all that, and then moving into where you are now and the strength coach that you are now. And the topic I want to touch on specifically with regards to that, and something I'd like you to share with everyone, is what you feel has been the main kind of parts, if I could say, of your career up to this point, where even though you're a strength coach, a lot of the conversations that you have in podcasts and a lot of PR that you've done is around being a man, you know?
Okay, so I'll kind of break that down into smaller chunks. So just in summary, so for my generation, like leaving school, call it 2007, strength and conditioning as a coaching platform or a business didn't exist in the country. No one did it. It doesn't mean, I can't say no one did it, no one that I knew of. There weren't any jobs available. That kind of coaching environment did not exist to my knowledge, and I'd been around everywhere from Pretoria, Tyre, Joburg, to kind of try to see if it did exist. And at the time, it was just pretty much sports science and the testing capacity at universities, and then obviously personal training at Health and Racket, pre-Virgin Active, pre-Planet Fitness, and then obviously those broke out. And there was just still PTing and sports science. I looked into the sports science model at the time when I left school, and I didn't enjoy just testing. I didn't find that stimulating enough for me. That wasn't what I wanted to do, because obviously I'd been an athlete myself. I still was an athlete trying to pursue my sprinting career. And I always realized what I wanted to do was enable and better performance. I just didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know what that sounded like. I didn't know, but I just knew it wasn't testing athletes. And I knew PTing wasn't either where I wanted to quite be. Not that I couldn't train people, it's just I needed something more than that. So I kind of found myself dabbling with multiple courses, trying to find what strength and conditioning looked like, because there wasn't a blueprint for me here locally. There was a lot of gyms abroad in the States, everywhere else had done strength and conditioning, but there wasn't really a blueprint on like how to do it, how to get there. So that kind of led me to go down different avenues. So obviously you start with your general personal training, and then I started finding different courses around different topics, around different performance models. And I started with the IAAF model through track and field, which was my original background. That then led me to Olympic weightlifting, which has allowed me to also meet one of my current business partners, and then powerlifting, and then as it goes, jiu-jitsu, wrestling. But then in those fields, you start learning different modalities of training and studying. So obviously it led me to do multiple courses, because much like sports science pretty much has its own degree, which breaks into like anatomy, physiology, testing, and then biomechanics, you have this little, capsulated degree. Strength and conditioning, because it's so, how can I say, broad, it's almost endless, because you're kind of problem solving for any sports performance or performance orientated need. You can't really encapsulate it in one little degree. And that's, I think, why it attracted me in the first place, was it was endless. And that's kind of where it's led me to a lot of my endeavors, business, people, all of it. I like limitless opportunities. So on a coaching platform with understanding my personality, I've enjoyed going down that rabbit hole to the point where I became the coach that I am, because it's always about problem solving for me. It never became about just sport or one sport or a niche. It started as a niche. I was a very specialized, an Olympic weightlifting coach for a long time, and then that wasn't enough for me because I wanted to solve more problems. I wanted to find more solutions. I didn't like that only people that needed help with weightlifting could come to me. I started trying to diversify further and further so that I could help more and more and more. So just helping people, I guess, was the root, and being able to apply it in a performance manner, no matter what the sport problem or need was kind of where I needed to go. And that allowed me to get to a point where I was able to open up my own business, own brand with my partner, Darren. We have Performance Purist. We've got 2 gyms now, and we've been able to benefit a decent amount of people in the last 4.5 years.
Great. And I think one of the things that has definitely stood out to me is the fact that you work with not only general population, but you've been able to work with many high-level athletes, from world-class boxers, rugby players. I mean, the list goes on. And I think just to kind of move from that into this idea and this recipe of being a better man, we can start jumping into that. I want to know, what correlation have you found between your professional athletes and being a better man and being a good man?
So I actually don't find much of a correlation between athletes and being better men. The harsh truth is, I've been fortunate, but that's the harsh truth. I've been fortunate to work with almost every client you can imagine, from first responder to father, mother, youth development, professional athlete at the highest level, students, you name it. There's not a single candidate that I haven't had the opportunity or privilege to work with. And just because someone's an elite athlete doesn't make them a good man. I've learned this is reality. The reality is, actually, just because you're on an elite platform doesn't make you a good person. It means you just have a high opportunity to showcase what you want people to believe you are. Doesn't mean you are that person. So, something that I've kind of focused on for a while is actually spending more time with men, regardless of profession, background, or platform, and allowing them to either understand my interpretation or help them understand their own interpretation, or learn from them or share with them. So, it's always a two-way street on what it takes to be a better man. I wouldn't give the credit to an athlete or a professional athlete that they now are a better person. History has shown me that they're not. My own personal experience has shown me that they're not. And rightfully so. It's mainly because I think when you're at that high level, and that comes across anything, opportunity to fail or opportunity to not be the better person exists, because temptation is higher. You get a lot more affirmation. You get your ego fed a lot more. You have a lot more at your fingertips. Whereas that a normal person who gets ignored every day, just does his job, goes about it, that doesn't have that temptation. Doesn't mean he wouldn't fall into the same trap, but he doesn't get the same constant, affirmation from people, society, women, whatever you want to call it. So he's not being tested maybe as much. So that's why I can't actually say that athletes are better men or not better men. But I just do know they are tested more often, and 9 times out of 10 they battle with that. Whether they see that if they battle with it or not is obviously up to them and their own journey. But the one thing I like to back is men working tirelessly to be better, regardless of their platform, regardless of what they interpret that is, compared to a professional athlete. They're just not in the spotlight. But I think they have as much of a ripple effect as a professional athlete.
That's interesting. I think I find that topic pretty interesting because, I think a lot of men see other successful men and they look up to that, but I think they're looking up to what they can, what is portrayed and not what may actually be going on in that person's life. I mean, I know that just from I mean, what you see in the news with professional athletes having like affairs and this and that, and then you like you look up to that person as this like mentor, but like you looking up to that person just from what you can see, you know?
Well, that leads me to my question to you: is going, what's success? Why would you look up to that person? So, listen, I sit in a very unique position, I guess. So I can have the clarity around it, but I honestly can't tell you when last I ever looked up to an athlete as a role model, personally. And I haven't. Maybe I honestly think it was back maybe when I was in high school, and I looked up to Maurice Green because him as a sprinter was the sprinter I tried to embody because of his confidence. Outside of that, I was 14, 15. Other than that, I have never looked up to an athlete as a role model, because my question, but that's how I challenge the narrative on most things, is going, what is there to look up to? It's just a person doing their job. Yeah. So, the admiration behind it, I understand people enjoy sports. I understand people are fans of sports. I'm not challenging why people are I'm not trying to sit here and question why people look up to athletes. I'm just saying, what's stopping you from doing that to someone else who's doing their job as successful? You're just not in the limelight, so you don't get to see it. It's not on Supersport Blitz. So you're not seeing, when you talk to the first responders and you see the stuff that these guys go through daily with zero affirmation, zero social media following. It's not on Supersport Blitz, but they just went and, saved 6 kids earlier today, or someone that stops human trafficking, or a detective that solved a case for a family that's been suffering in turmoil for the last 10 years. You don't see that stuff. But that, to me, is stuff that I actually look at, because there's, you're talking about guys that are not getting paid. They are going against the grain. They're risking their lives. They're doing stuff that is completely against any form of, how can I say, assistance. And they've just got continuous resistance. And they do it every day without a single pat on the back. That's the kind of stuff I look for in men to promote, push, and seek admiration and try encourage. Whereas that it's too easy that when you're in the limelight and you're getting all the likes on social media, it's too easy to find that as admirable. It really is. So it's not to knock athletes. We all love sports. Sport's great. It's great to see someone push themselves to the limits, and no one can say that don't appreciate that. Of course, I appreciate that, but to not say that person is a role model, or to assume that success, it does confuse me a little bit, because it means, like, what is success? Someone doing their job, if that's success, then no problem. But I think people misinterpret what success really means to them, or they haven't asked the question of what success actually is, because success does differ from person to person. You can meet some people that are extremely wealthy, but spiritually they're very weak, or they're spiritually in a dark place. So a spiritual person doesn't find them successful. And that spiritual person is right, because that's their interpretation of success. Someone who values money, who values their identity and their own value with wealth, if they don't see someone who doesn't have money, or they meet someone with money, they think that person is successful, because that's how they value themselves. They value themselves with money, which is actually quite common. And obviously now we have the generation of people that value themselves with how many followers they have, or what their influence rate is, and how much influence they have over people as success. So you can't say any of it's wrong. You just got to say, well, what's successful to you? Because, if you don't come from that background, what is success? And why are you assuming that person is successful? Because they're showing you one thing here, but they've got, look at most athletes, they've got failed marriages, kids that they just got on child support, but, they won the NBA playoffs, so successful.
Yeah.
It's pretty dysfunctional, if you ask me.
Yeah. What does success mean to you?
I knew you were going to ask me my statement with a question. Cheeky bugger. So I think success to me is very deep. It's not a singular. And I think that's why I'm on this constant pursuit of more in every field. So my own interpretation of success, not my own interpretation of success in others, my own interpretation of success for myself would be achieving as many layers as possible, so that I'm continuously improving while dropping as little as possible. So the reason why I say it like that is because I want to do as much as possible across the board. So I don't want to just be wealthy. I also want to be healthy. I also want to be present at home. I also want to be a good father. Now, so having said that, that's why I added in that while dropping as little as possible, because when you pursue that many things, you're going to drop something. When you're out working trying to create that wealth, trying to create new business opportunities. You're not at home, which means you can drop the ball with the wife, you can drop the ball with your kid. But if you are at home, at times you're not working. And then you're doing those two things maybe well. Maybe you are getting the work-relationship ratio right, but now you're not training. You're not pursuing physical endeavors. So to me, my only level of success is trying to find the right place where I can be at in my life, where I'm able to do those things with dropping as little as possible. It doesn't mean I'll never drop something, but managing that ratio, that's success for me.
Okay. An interesting question that I got asked the other day, and I tried to answer it, but I found myself kind of at a loss for words. What defines a man to you?
So you were at loss for words, right?
Yeah, because I got asked that question, and I was like, well, someone that looks after themselves, someone that looks after their family, someone who's honest, but like I just found myself on this like very superficial kind of level, and maybe that is the answer. I don't know, but I think something that I've always found with you and that I've respected with you is, so for those of you listening and watching that don't know, I've been a client of Josh's for like 2 years now, and I went to him after I went through quite a tough time in my life when my mom unfortunately passed away, and I was just in a place where I was battling to kind of keep it all together, and I came to you, and I remember walking in and I was like, do you think I should just pay for like the whole year and we train like 5 days a week? And you were like, whoa, hold on. Like, how about we start with once a week? Like, and then I'll give you like a few other things to do. Like you'll train with me and you'll do a walk, like, and then we'll build it up. And I think like that was something that I like pushed back on quite a bit, because I was like, well, like I'm ready to train, like, so let's just train, and I think moving from that, I think one of the biggest things I began getting from our training was not necessarily just the training, but it was like the conversations around just being a better human being, and I think you've definitely been one of the biggest changes for me over the last 2 years, and I think you've done that for many, many, many people, that kind of extend a little bit further from just being their coach, and I think with having that experience, I think maybe you're more, I don't want to say the word qualified, but maybe you can come up with like a slightly better definition of what a good man should be.
Yeah. Well, I think to just frame it again for people to understand is, I've been able to observe people long enough, and I think that's where coaching went deeper for me, and I've spoken about that before with Jesse as well, is, you're dealing with people, and when dealing with people, it's not just about, training blocks and meso and microcycles and making them stronger and fitter. It goes deeper than that. So, just for context for those, utilizing your story, at the time when you came there, you kind of just you knew how the transaction of coaching worked. You come from that background yourself, and you thought, okay, I'll just throw money at it, train, I'll escape what I'm upset about and what's bothering me, and everything will just be better, right?
Yeah.
And that, that's the hard part, is that I think, just to touch on it, that's one of the factors about what, how to be a better man, is one of the things is you can't escape your problems. Men that tend to escape their problems, and there's many ways that men can. It doesn't mean we're not immune to it, but trying to escape your reality is the first thing that allows you to not become a better man. So when you are trying to avoid, distract yourself, drugs, alcohol, promiscuous activities with multiple women that you haven't built proper relationships with, any form of escapism. Some people go down that rabbit hole with sports. They just throw themselves into, now the new craze is paddle. I'm not saying paddle is it, but, some guys will be on that court 3 times a day, every day of the week, just escaping. Now, I know it's an outlet. I know it's not the worst thing in the world, and I'm not saying it is. But what I'm implying is that I'm saying if you're not actually just facing your problems, no matter how hard it is, no matter how dark it is, no matter how lonely it is, you're not going to be a better man. It's just not going to happen, because you're going to learn how to deflect. You're going to learn how to suppress. And we are very good at suppressing. That's why so many people out there walk around with trauma that you'll never know. They got trauma right under their skin. And that breaks my heart, because we create an environment where people are told to just kind of stifle and move on. Now, I know that a lot of people go like, that's what it means to be a man. You just suck it up and carry on. I'm like, no, that didn't work, because our previous generation that all of us were raised from, our age group was raised from, it didn't work well, because we've got a lot of dysfunctional people walking around today because of it, because they come from a household where people suppressed everything they felt, told you to suppress everything you feel, and then it just creates this turmoil. Instead, people should be dealing with their situation, whatever that may be, whatever they may look like, journaling, NLP, therapists, just converting with someone, talking to someone that knows the matter, founding groups that can allow you to assist working with it, whatever it may be, because whether it be mourning a loss, whether it may be like certain, bad situations that people have grown up around, where, that stuff can sit with you for a long time, whether it's something as simple as an addiction, where you battle with an addiction of some sort, where you battle with something that can control your life in any shape or form. No one is immune to all of it. We all got some form of Achilles heel with any of that. So it doesn't make you a better person because you don't have that. It means you're a better person because you're willing to fight it, accept it, adjust, and move forward. So, using your context, I think just to simplify that, the one definition for a man to be better, because I don't think you can definitively say in one aspect what is a better man, and that is the problem. It's kind of like saying what is the absolute best athlete. It's endless.
Yeah.
So I think all people should want to be better. I speak on behalf of men. I don't believe men have enough of a voice. I've always said that. I believe men, in order to be better, need to actually stop their bullshit. They really do. Men are full of a lot of shit. I know all women will be like, yeah, they are. I'm like, no, you don't understand what men are battling with. Men have their own battles. We know that when it comes to mental health. We know that when it comes to noticing the depression rate. We notice when it comes to men not being able to understand sexuality, understanding what to do with that, how to have a healthy sexual relationship. Men don't know how to have that. Men never have had that, because at first they are controlled by their libido, but then secondly they're controlled by their perverse mind, because that gets fed as well. And men inherently want to push boundaries, right? So you add a libido plus boundary pushing in capabilities, men become quite unhealthy in certain aspects. You do that with alcoholism, you do it with drugs, those two link up, then you add that paired with sexuality, and you got a cocktail for disaster. All you do is you have someone having a distant parent, not in the picture, then they've got no control of moral belief with that compass. And then you add those other cocktails together, and then you've got society filled with men. And then you got to ask yourself why women are battling, because they don't have men around them to steer the ship. You got kids growing up around fathers like this. It's just a shit show. But it doesn't mean those men can't be better. It doesn't mean that it's wrong to be that kind of man. It just means you should be willing to acknowledge that you are dropping the ball when it comes to being the man you should be. That's it. It doesn't mean you're supposed to be perfect. No one's perfect. I'm not perfect. No one is perfect. What it is, and the biggest frustration that I have, is that men are not willing to acknowledge, no, listen, I'm not being the best man I can be, and I'm being full of shit here. I need to tighten some screws here. No, what happens is those men find men who are in the same kind of boat, and then they just they're the fuel to each other's bullshit. And then they think that is masculinity, because they'll do other things that are manly to kind of hide that, and they still feel like, no, we're men. And, I just disagree. And I just feel like it's letting us down, it's letting men down, and it's also failing our society, because it's failing women and it's failing children. And, it is sad. But at the same breath, there are a lot of men that are starting to now shape and change and wanting to be better, much like your platform. Men looking for help online. It's created a disconnect where a guy doesn't have to probably go to a doctor and feel that embarrassment or feel that interpretation of judgment, he can just privately get that help. It doesn't matter that it's private anymore. Just he's looking for help. And that's what I care about. I care that men are just looking for help, whatever that may look like. But just try to look for help to be 1% better. That journey, once that journey starts, men will start feeling really good. And when men start feeling good, they're men of action. And when men are action, a lot of shit gets done. But until that point, guys are just going to be stuck in limbo. So it's not quite maybe the bullet point answer you're looking for.
No,
but I don't ever believe I have any right to say definitively what a good man is, because context will always be relevant. Because I can't talk about father this, father that. Some guy might never be a father, and that's okay. Now, I can't now make him feel like an incomplete man because he's not a father. And vice versa. You can't talk about providing money, because there's some broke guys out there that are phenomenal men.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean they're failed men. Just because they might not be getting it right with business at this time, you know what I mean? It doesn't mean they won't make it down the line. So, I never want to create a stigmatism to what a good man is, but I do believe that if you're not working on being better in your capacity, in your context, then you're not being a better man.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think talking about, people coming through our platform, I think one of the biggest roadblocks we found is men not wanting to come forward because of this idea that like men need to be brave and men need to be strong, and men like when someone sees, for example, like erectile dysfunction, they connect that immediately with being a weak man, because men need to always perform, and we just find that really, really sad,
No, I mean, listen, men have identified with their penises from the dawn of time.
Yeah.
I think it's not fair. If someone is battling whatever capacity it is, whatever their reason is for that erectile dysfunction, and not that I'm even a doctor, I can't speak on it. However, the fact is the egotism behind the fact that men will either not fix that, avoid reasons, instead of just trying to find, okay, geez, I've got a problem here. But you see, the only reason why men will at least look for problems when it comes to their penises is because it's their penis. They still want to get laid.
Yeah.
But what about the emotional shit? What about the stuff that they're carrying from when they're young? But that doesn't affect them from getting laid, so they don't sort that out. So this is the problem, right? Men are so full of shit. That, yes, it is important. Do fix your health when it comes to your erectile dysfunction. Do fix your sex life. Feel better. Have better sex, for sure. But also fix your emotional stuff, because I can guarantee there's also a good chance that's linked.
100%.
You know what I mean? Or, so, yes, fix the superficial stuff. And I call it superficial, but, when it comes to your sex life, to a large degree, that is superficial, because emotional damage can affect you a lot more, and you're going to create a ripple effect if you don't amend those bridges and you don't sort those things out. So yeah, you got to love how men think, though. They'll fix the things that matter, but won't fix the things that don't matter, and vice versa. I think if men just spent more time going, okay, right, like kind of writing down how they see themselves, what's their little list on what they're doing right, because you must acknowledge what you're doing right. You can't just slander yourself 24/7. But men should write that list down. Okay, how am I doing? How's it looking? Cool. Where am I still dropping the ball? Where do I battle? And if they just started trying to see if they can tick that list off, just that alone, they'll see a change in their life. Don't just worry about the boner.
Yeah. We should make that a quote.
T-shirts are coming. Merch. Yeah. Link in bio.
Correct. I think one of the talking points we've had within Remed-e is one around that, like, because of this idea that men need to be brave and strong, like the lines have been kind of blurred between like I see a man being brave and strong is coming forward, like, and talking about something that they battling with. And I think so many men just keep it in, and one of the things that we keep seeing in Remed-e is how, like, they want help, but even though they get that help and the treatment works, they feel this huge level of shame still, you know?
Yeah. It's also how we've conditioned ourselves to believe what a man is. And listen, you're not wrong for thinking that your physiology and your libido and your ability to sleep with a partner, whatever your preference is associated with it. Of course it is, but it's also tied in with your ego as well. So, if you're feeling like you've failed or something's wrong with you, and that's what you associate wrong is, you do need a little bit of help on just understanding who you are a little bit more. It's entitled to be concerned. If you do have something wrong, you're entitled to be concerned. But that's why platforms like yours exist, for someone to ask the questions to see, okay, wait, nothing's that wrong with me. I just need a little bit of assistance. I need a little bit of weight loss, so I can use a certain prescription to assist myself. No problem. But to put your entire identity around it, then you have a bit of a problem, because then you clearly have a bit of a low self-esteem, that you value yourself so low that a man will always have more to offer outside of his erection. Let's call a spade a spade. Yes, primitively speaking, men were designed to fight and procreate. That was our simple role. That's why we're so easy to kill. That's why we have cholesterol to kill us off ourselves. If it's not in the battlefield, we are meant to fight and procreate, if you're talking primitively. The problem is that we've evolved quite a bit, that men are problem solvers. Men are built for purpose. Men are useful. So to associate and think that your only use on this earth is, if you see yourself as only useful if you can have sex or get an erection, then you clearly don't know your talents and what you are capable of doing. And then you should really search a little bit deeper there on, what you really are good at and how useful you really are. Because men, the one thing I dig about being a guy is that, man, we're useful. We do a lot of stuff. We do everything. And that's how to give them birth.
Yeah.
But park that for a second and going, it's awesome to be a guy. We get to do a lot of cool stuff. We get to do a lot of dangerous stuff. We get to do a lot of, rad things. And if you're not spending your life just trying to pursue those things, you will just associate and think that the most exciting part of your day is getting an erection and sleeping with the missus, which is nice, but it's not the only and everything that dictates being a man and being happy and, living life to the fullest. So I just think, guys should start having a bit of a healthier relationship on how they see themselves, not just, their sexual promiscuity or sexual lifestyle.
Couldn't agree more. I think there's a topic that I've been thinking about for a while, and that's been one of proactively managing your health instead of reactive, right? And I say that because many of our patients, not necessarily the hair loss, more the ED, once the doctor has had their consult, you look at some of those patients, and I'm not going to say all of them, but the majority of them all battle with their weight, their cholesterol, so what do you think, what do you feel is important for men to focus on in terms of their health and their exercise to possibly avoid issues like that in the future? I think there are obviously there is that kind of small percentage of men that no matter how healthy and strong they are, they have this erectile dysfunction condition, and it's really, really hard for them, But
it's not really hard for them.
Yes, sorry. I need.
Yes.
Yes, it's not hard for them. It's difficult for them.
There we go.
I must use my choice of words a little smarter when we talk about things like that. Yes. But yeah, I think there's this huge correlation between men battling with their health and ED, and we help them from a medication point of view. But what kind of, if you had to give 3 to 5 tips on what they can do to kind of proactively manage their health, so maybe they don't have those issues, what would those be?
So I think back to what I originally said about the cool thing about men is we really are built for purpose, and we designed that way. So I think a lot of men don't find their purpose in the sense of a physical manner. Not all men are drawn towards physical culture and physical literacy, and I understand that. I mean, I say I understand that because I've worked with enough people to see that that's the case. Not because I've been that person. I've been very fortunate that I've just naturally taken to all sports, and I have it's an outlet for me, and I enjoy it. But I think a lot of men, that might not be the case, and that's okay. But I do believe men need to find a physical challenge of some sort that scares them. Men are supposed to be scared. We're designed that way. We really respond well to fear in the sense that it makes us actionable. Now, the reason why I say a little bit of fear and I say we're good with it is because we inherently can be also pretty lazy. You know, it's quite a common thing for men to be quite lazy. So when you're scared, you fear failure, you fear the outcome of pain, you feel the outcome of hurt, but there's some form of object that you're scared of that outcome if you don't do X and Y. So what I normally relate that to is I say men should find a physical challenge that scares them. So most of the stuff I used to do after, I left my original sporting backgrounds, I did sports and I did challenges that actually scare me. I don't do challenges that just speak to me because then I get too comfortable because it's too easy for me. So I started choosing things that were actually, that were quite scary for me. So that's when I took on, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I didn't come from a combat background. I didn't come from a sporting background where that was part of my physical culture. I came from sprinting. They treat you like a little racehorse. You don't get touched. You don't get bruised because you just got to perform from 0 to 100. Then I went to like powerlifting and weightlifting, which yes, was far more physical, but the object is an inanimate object. And I'm fighting an inanimate object. So you already have to start culturing your mind around fighting an inanimate object, and that thing doesn't care, and that thing's ruthless. But then going to actually fighting another person and trying your best not to get your arm snapped or strangled in front of everyone when you're competing, there was a whole new sphere of like fear, and not fear because you actually were scared. You were just fear like of handling this whole endeavor of like, you weren't cultured around it. And then you take all the other things, teaching firearms, working with wrestling, and then now taking on endurance events. It's not because endurance events actually make me comfortable. I don't like them. I don't like being out in the mountains for 3 days. I'm not this person that gets into the Zen state. And, as I hear the grass blowing, I'm in this calm state, and I'm just one with Mother Earth. I'm spitting, I'm swearing, I'm cussing. But then I start learning to let go. And being afraid of failing out there or being uncomfortable with something that's not naturally my take. I come from being fast, powerful, and those are my gifts. Now I'm putting myself in environments where those aren't naturally my gifts. I'm not naturally an endurance athlete. I'm not the lightest human out there. At 105 kilos, I'm making my life very hard out there. But the fear of it, the fear of failing, the fear of the challenge, the fear of the unknown of it, gets me going. It gets me to refine myself. It gets me to test my character. It gets me to test myself. Now, where I'm just summarizing this is I'm going, a lot of men do training or they do things that don't actually speak to them. And I've spoken about this in depth with a lot of people. You got to find something of purpose to you. I always relate it to fear first. Something must scare you a little bit. Not to the point where you're frozen, but it must make you a little bit nervous. Whether it be doing a white-collar boxing match, whether it be your first lifting comp, whether it be just taking on a 5K run, whether it be just getting to get running. It doesn't matter what it actually is. That context is personal. It just must scare you a little bit. And that, to me, I believe, works with a lot of men. I don't believe when guys are driving now to Virgin Active to go hit bars and tries, they're not shitting their pants.
Yeah.
And it's such a culture that means, oh no, I went to the gym, I go to the gym. Nothing about it scares you.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying every session must be fearful and dreading for your life, man. But you know what it's like when I tell you, okay, I'll see you on Friday, pack your lungs. You're left with a little bit of anxiety about what's about to come your way.
I wouldn't say a little bit of anxiety. I get
there we go. But
immense
exactly,
anxiety.
right? But now the overcoming you get by being there, showing up, facing it on, even if I don't even make it as hard as I made you believe it is, it's that bit of character building where you had to overcome something that you're now dreading. But not dreading like you hate it. There's a big difference.
Yeah.
Because if you hated it, you would have left. You know what I mean? But and a lot of people do things that they hate and they think that that's making them better. And it's a little bit on the fence, especially when it comes to health. But that challenge and overcoming that challenge, I believe, will make a lot of men in better shape with less health issues, which then, in fact, allows to have better sex lives, which allow them to have better relationships and become. And it's this whole chain effect. But the biggest thing there is actually, it's not just being healthy, it's men challenging themselves to be better. That's the fundamental root. It always will be. When men are challenging themselves to be better, everything else falls in line. And that's why just going to the gym down the road and getting a personal trainer, that might scare you. Then I want you to do that. But make sure you keep getting to a place where you're uncomfortable. Don't get to a place where you're complacent, where you, It doesn't mean you can't have a trainer for 3, 4 years, 5 years, 7 years. But if that oak's not making you feel a little bit anxious once a week, twice a week, or pushing you to do things that scares you a little bit, then you aren't, you're not making sure that you're testing that character. You're not putting yourself out there enough to be exposed. So I think, the long and short of it, once men are challenged more physically, and they challenge themselves physically, whatever that may look like, the more they're going to start seeing things change in their life, in their bedroom, at home, in the boardroom. They're going to start things change a lot better because men are designed for challenge. We must overcome adversity. We have to. When we don't, we become complacent and we get up to shit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Moving into a topic that's like somewhat a little more taboo, and I don't think it should be, but it is, and that's the topic kind of around intimacy. And the reason I want to talk about it specifically with you is because I think when you're young and you aren't working as hard and you don't have a huge amount of responsibility, intimacy is a pretty easy thing to kind of have with your partner, just because there's time, life isn't as stressful and crazy, but I think as you get busier, you start to kind of not, well, I don't say you, I mean many men start to not prioritize intimacy and make time for that, but then they also complain that their sex life and their intimacy with their partner is shit. And I think the reason I want to ask that question to you and why you feel it's important and how you kind of prioritize that in your life is because I know that there's many evenings that you working pretty late. You now have a little boy, you're really, really, really busy, but you still seem to make the time to kind of get away to a little game reserve for a couple of days, or just spend a bit of time with your family,
So I think for me to explain intimacy, and I'm not a guru on it, but the one thing I can advocate for most people, and I've learned this with everything I've dealt with people, is communication. So intimacy is communication. Yeah. Guys just need to start actually understanding that. The reason why people start stuffing up a lot, and I'm in the eye of the storm, pretty much what you just summarized there. I'm in the eye of the storm. So people that don't know, I've got an 8-month-old little baby boy. I'm in the eye of the storm. I've got a few businesses, challenging myself physically. I'm in the eye of the storm. So there's very little time, averaging 4 hours of sleep a night. But the main thing I've realized in the high ebbs and flows with my wife solely come on when I communicate piss poorly. Yeah. So if you want to use your analogy on saying when you're younger and intimacy is a lot easier, it's because you have more time to communicate.
Yeah.
So everything that is to make a relationship successful in any relationship, bedroom, boardroom, friendships, communication. And it's really been something that's been I'm always on it in the sense that it's a big part of my jobs. It's a big part of what I do with some of my consulting. It's a big job collectively, and it's something I've studied quite in depth. But communication has been front of mind this whole week for me, and it's been slapping me in the face on how much are we really pushing communication? Because intimacy and what that means in whatever sexual preferences you may have, or whatever you want to try to get out of the bedroom, or whatever it is you're trying to get with your partner, is solely going to be based on how well you communicated with your partner. Yeah. So something I talk about a lot in business, and I talk about a lot with athletes or any person that I saw, that wants to work with me, is managing expectation. We had this discussion with a business project that we were discussing, right? Managing expectation is a big thing. Now, people naturally create expectation around communication. So when I talk to you, you start managing an expectation around how you interpret either myself or the information that I've given you. Now, the big thing that I have here is I'm going, if you don't manage the expectation, you lead to disappointment. Disappointment leads to resentment. Resentment leads to fights, and you got this cycle. So for intimacy to exist in a relationship, whatever you want that to look like, it bases on how much you communicate with your partner, not your partner to you, because you can only hold yourself accountable to how much you communicate. It's the same as communication works on. I have to watch you well enough when I'm communicating what either I feel or what I'm thinking to see your response, to make sure that you've interpreted my message correctly. But people don't. People just talk at one another. And then they wonder why they don't understand me. My partner doesn't understand me. They don't know my needs or what I want, and I'm not getting what I want. If you're not getting what you want, you're clearly not vocalizing yourself correctly.
Yeah.
And I'll use a silly example, but people that know me will laugh at it. I don't like my cappuccinos hot. I don't drink anything hot. I just can't. I'm not one of those humans that just guzzle boiling water. I don't know how people do it. Now, it's always a game for me, right? Unless they don't understand my order, and it sounds silly, but this is the basics of communication. I have to ask a waiter or barista, how I'd prefer it, just TLC or whatever. I get the drink. Now, that guy could have a lot going on. There's 8 other people in the queue here. I don't know how much sleep this guy's had. That machine's noisy. He's smacking it, bam, bam, bam. We've all had our coffees. We drink like 6 a day.
Yes.
Okay? Now, I get it, and it's still hot. Now, I can't just snap at him. Now, hear me out, chat. I'm not saying I can't, because clearly I've asked him. I have to first go, how did I communicate myself to him? Because this guy could just be like, you're just yelling something my way. So you got to change your communication. You got to keep the onus on yourself till you get what you want. And it sounds so silly, but I'll make sure I get my cappuccino the way I want it, not in an entitled sense, so that I actually keep practicing my communication. Because yes, sometimes I might meet a barista that gets me straight away and he makes it perfect. Oh, geez, that's a great day. I'm going to get days where the guy gives me the cappuccino. That's okay, cool. You're not getting this right. Just give me cold milk. I get the milk. It's not cold milk. Then I have to send the cold milk back. And it's such a silly example, but it's a perfect example that works in your day-to-day. Some guy just talks about how he wants to have sex the whole time with his partner. Okay, but his partner might not be understanding what a lot of sex is for him or what does that look like. But he's not vocalizing it. He's just expecting it in his head because he hears his mate's stories and he watches a lot of videos and movies. So in his mind, he's created this idea of what that looks like. But his partner has no idea what that looks like. And then he keeps getting disappointed by his partner until he goes and cheats on his partner, thinking he doesn't get what he wants at home. So a lot of things that people stuff up with is because people don't know how to communicate. And we don't. We have social media and WhatsApp to teach us to communicate. That's really bad communication. We need this, where people face one another, watch body language, able to interpret how you're resonating or reacting to what I'm saying. We need that. Couples need it. Friendships need it. Business relations need it. Something as simple as how you're making contact with the person you're ordering your cappuccino matters. I find myself, I used to mumble my order. I'm just like, hey, cappuccino, don't make it too hot. Guy gets it, and I'm like, then I actually, which is me.
Yeah.
I'm not communicating correctly. And then I'll still put the onus on him until I get it right. But the job in communication is that you got to keep explaining or correctly narrating your point of view until that person understands your point of view so they can communicate in return. And then you obviously have to learn how to listen. That's communication. So intimacy is communication. And I think a lot more people, if they spend more time understanding how to communicate with their partner, friends, and business associates in whatever field, they would get what they want, and they'd get to have what they want, or they'll be able to be at least assisted and find what they want. But men battling with intimacy is solely based a lot of the time on communication and not managing expectation.
Sure. Yeah, it's really interesting because a few of our patients ask our doctor during their consult, like, what can I do to spice up my sex life with my partner? And I mean, as much as our doctor is happy to kind of answer that question, it's not really a question that she can answer. I mean, she can give a bit of advice. I mean, but that's a question that really should be asked to your partner. But I think people are concerned. What if I ask that and my partner takes it personally, and then we have an argument about it?
But back to communication. It's a skill. You're not gonna just get it right the first time you say, "Ha, I'd like you to choke me."
Yeah.
And that's your thing. And then you wonder why your partner's not scared to be around you, because now you just come across like this psycho or this weirdo.
Yeah.
No, it talks about intimacy is allowing yourself to be vulnerable with your partner, sharing that vulnerability by communicating your deepest thoughts or whatever it may be, or your deepest fears, allowing yourself to be completely vulnerable to that person. That's intimacy.
Yeah.
Yes, whether they can adapt or adjust or give you what you want, only time will tell. And no one's obligated to do that. But making yourself vulnerable, which is what men don't like to do, that's the first route with your communication to understand intimacy with a partner. But men don't. They want to keep their little shield up, their bravado. I'm a tough guy, look at me. And then just expect this woman to do what they want to make them happy. And then if I talk about it, you better just do it, and then I'm happy. It's a very unfulfilled way to approach a relationship.
I agree. Cool. And then I think just in closing, the last question that I'd like to pose to you is, if you had to gift men with one thing, what would it be? Now, that obviously doesn't have to be something that you could physically give them. It could be something spiritually. It could be an emotion. But if you had to gift men with one thing, what would that be?
Wisdom.
Why?
Because that gives them the ability to be a critical thinker and understand that you don't have to react to every single thing that encompasses your life. You can think further than tomorrow, and you can have the peace to trust that it'll be right.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah. Men don't need more than that. Men need critical thinking and the peace to think further than tomorrow. Trust the rest will sort itself out, but men need to think further than today.
I agree. Thanks for your time, buddy.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Great.